Basically, John Lennon and you're Paul McCartney.
You're the one that got shot in the strawberry
I'm definitely
fields.
going to be the one that gets shot.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to a special edition of the Desert Island Institute of Film.
Well, here's another nice mess you've gotten me into. What are we going to do? I'm scared to death.
I'm Big Paul, and
Little Paul?
yeah.
Oh, Hercules.
If you're new to us, we encourage you to go back and watch every single episode
If
of
you're
this.
been with us, go back and watch them again.
Especially the first episode, which kind of tells who we are.
This is what you're doing. This is what I want you to do. Any questions?
Typically, our episodes have what we call the sevens, where we count up, 7 films that are just something on some kind of a theme. This is different.
Mm-hmm.
How is it different?
I like to say that I've never seen this anywhere on YouTube yet or social media. Maybe I'm wrong because I'm no historian, but we talk about the desert island lists or whatever. What else we hear about the theoretical spaces where people like to debate is the Mount Rushmore of... So I picked a weird one, I think, to be the first one. I think logically probably would have been like the Mount Rushmore of horror movies or something, but Mount Rushmore of comedy.
I don't know about you. This was one of the hardest things to do.
That's what she said.
When I first started making my lists, I did the Mount Rushmore of comedy actors, comedy actresses, directors, writers, producers, because they all play such important roles. And then you said, oh no, au contraire, mon frere. One Mount Rushmore to represent comedy.
One ring to bring them all, and in the darkness find them.
4, it's really difficult to do 4 because you want to do justice to the whole spectrum of whatever you're looking at. And it's tough, man.
So do we want to start? There's really no order, but in my order, there was a hierarchy.
What do you mean by hierarchy?
Well, what was the very first name that absolutely had to be on, that was no doubt was going to be on Mount Rushmore. And then number 2 and number 3 and number 4.
Okay.
And keep going.
Fair enough.
All right.
Number 4.
All right, this to me, I think this was the biggest no-brainer for me, and maybe I'm wrong, but Mel Brooks, I mean, shocker. Even go back to being a kid and being exposed to him at a young age. I mean, Spaceballs, Blazing Saddles is probably the most un-PC movie ever made, and it's probably the funniest film ever made.
That's my number 4 as well.
Yeah, I thought this would be the one that we probably would get together.
He owned comedy in the 70s. Now, this was a time period way before they had the internet and streaming. You would go to a theater and it would be shoulder to shoulder packed people to see Blazing Saddles.
Laws in gain! Kappa walk. It's all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Big is in. Take off. What the hell is this?
This is the bill that will convert the State Hospital for the Insane into the William J. Lepedemain Memorial Gambling Casino for the Insane.
Gentlemen, this bill will be a giant step forward in the treatment of the insane gambler.
Yes, bravo. Beautifully put down.
It was people around the corner waiting to go in and see it. And people would laugh. I mean, and again, you're exactly right. It's totally non-PC. It's very interesting because Richard Pryor was one of the writers, and Richard Pryor wrote the white characters, and Mel Brooks wrote the black characters, which is kind of an interesting. And there was talk that Richard Pryor would actually play the black sheriff in it, kind of stuff.
He would have done it. He would have played it completely different, but he would have nailed it.
But you had Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, and then he did Silent Movie and High Anxiety. And his whole shtick back then was to take a movie genre that is well known and well loved and do a spoof of it. So Blazing Saddles was Western. So all of the Western tropes in Western movies they turned it upside down. You know, in Western movies, you always have the cowboys sitting around the campfire eating beans. And he does that, except there's passing gas, and they're just like, farting all over the place. So he really is. He's just brilliant, and that's just his film. I mean, he did the producers. He did a lot of films. So you're right. Well,
he's also, his son is a writer. He did the Zombie Apocalypse, Guide to Zombie Apocalypse. I'm not sure about the title on that, but he's a comedy author as well as great author. So you can kind of add that on there as well. But I talk about Spaceballs personally for me. I know it's not his best movie, but that's in the 90s. So his reach is kind of. I mean, he's basically the John Ford of comedy. Mm-hmm. I mean, his log is long.
Yes, everything was going swimmingly for you until this. Yes, this is the thing that will ruin your reputation. Not your years of grotesque appearance or awkward social graces, or that Felix Ungerish way you clear your sinuses. No, it's this. Do you hear yourself talk? I might kill you tonight.
You talk about Mel Brooks' son. How you probably relate to him, to have, him and how he has to live up to his father.
Yeah.
And I know it's probably real hard for you.
Diet, Dr. Paul.
Alone. All right. Moving on up.
Number 3.
The next logical point for me to go in terms of my comedy, and I just think the man is hysterical. He could answer calls for 911 dispatch and it'd be the funniest thing you've ever heard in your life.
Do you have a favorite film that he did?
Man, I really like Superman 4 a lot. Anything with him and Gene Wilder in it is pretty much smashing. He's just so good. And then the stand-up too was a film, and when he was in his career, and it's considered basically like the best stand-up of all time. I mean, he's not a PC person, but that's why I think it makes him funnier, is because he's not going to tiptoe around stuff, and maybe they wouldn't work today, but it worked in the 70s.
Oh, if he were still alive today, what would he do with the world of politics? And
I feel it's time that black people went to space. White people have been going to space for years. And spacing out on us, as you might say.
And
he'd be president.
Oh, it'd be just his take on stuff. It's kind of like George Carlin kind of thing.
Oh, very much. Yeah.
What are you doing?
I'm getting bad. You better get bad, Jack, because you ain't bad. You're going to get you bad. They don't mess with you. Yeah. Hey, home, get down. Hey. You're a little too bad, ain't you?
Yeah, so good choice. My number 3, and I fought with myself. I'm just gonna say it was Jerry Lewis. And the reason I fought with myself is that he, is this whole thing, you have to separate people's work from who they are as a person, you know? And what he did for comedy is brilliant. But as a person, the more that you read, and of course it's not fair that when somebody dies and then people come out and say, yeah, he was really a schmuck, or he made a pass at me, or that kind of stuff. But, after a while you hear enough voices that all say the same story, and then you start to say, okay, what is it real? And then certainly how, he kind of disinherited his kids at the end. And this is, that's all just conjecture, but I have watched some interviews that he did towards the end of his life that he was really just kind of a schmuck. So it's hard for me to disassociate that from it. But he needs to be there, and the Nutty Professor. I mean, just how brilliant that was. His work that he did with Dean Martin early on, and it started. I mean, this is a guy that the Catskills and doing, Borscht Belt, comedy and their whole shtick, and then doing the movies. Yeah, he's my number 3. Is he on?
He was on my list. He was one of the first names I put down.
Yeah.
I didn't like him as much as you did, but I obviously have more of a connection seeing him more often. But he was on there.
You like Eddie Murphy's Nutty Professor more than?
No. His is okay. It's more of like a movie for younger kids and families, where I think the other one was just kind of like a comedy. I just like it better. I like the take on it better. the Slav versus like just kind of like the butthole.
Buddy Love.
Mm-hmm. And Eddie Murphy's a little bit more of a butthole than just kind of like a smooth operator.
Well, honey, I always say, if you're good and you know it, why waste time beating around a bush, true?
And I always say that to love yourself is the beginning of a lifelong romance. And after watching you, I know that you and you will be very happy together.
Just a minute, sweetheart. I don't recall dismissing you.
And that's kind of what I think that Buddy Love character was more like the real Jerry Lewis than the professor was. I think because he really was. If you go back and watch that movie, he's kind of just rude and kind of inappropriate with women and that kind of stuff. And so maybe that was him. Maybe that was, I don't know. I'm not trying to be unfair to him at all, because he. Obviously, he's on my Mount Rushmore, but it's based on his work and not on his person.
Number 2.
Yeah, so you talked about TV, and that was really difficult to separate, because I had names like Jonathan Lithgow that were like way up my list, Danny DeVito way up my list, but because I felt like it was TV heavy, seeing things like Dave Chappelle, those are names that to me are some of the finest comedians on planet Earth. But it's about movies. So for me, Jim Carrey. I mean, again, Dumb and Dumber is the movie I've seen more than anything on earth.
I'd be surprised if he wasn't on your list, because he was your Jerry Lewis.
Yes, you say that, and I totally could see it. He wasn't perfect with his acting choices, and maybe took a few swings into some serious stuff that were not all that great.
Majestic. I thought that was wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have it, but I will say this: I don't think I ever saw him in a role where he phoned it in. Even 23, that garbage pail, you can tell he tried. So
what's his best movie? If you were going to put it on a space shuttle and send it into
Dumb and
space.
Dumber. Dumb and Dumber.
Mary?
I desperately want to make love to a schoolboy.
I agree. It's one of those movies, if it's on television and you're passing through, you got to stop and watch it.
Yeah, I remember the first job I had at the video store, the very first thing I did when I got my account was rent that movie.
And how hard is it to play opposite of Jim Carrey in that movie, or any movie? And Jeff Daniels holds it together.
It's his reality that they both are half like over the top, but the other half of them is supremely realistic.
So I want to go someplace where we know somebody who can plug us into the social pipeline.
No, Lloyd! No! I say we stay here, we hunt for jobs, and we keep saving our money for the worm store.
I don't know about you, but I am getting sick and tired of running from creditors. You know what I'm sick and tired of, Harry? I'm sick and tired of having to eke my way through life. Sick and tired of being a nobody. But most of all, I'm sick and tired of having nobody.
Some of my greatest joys as a dad, being with his son, I wish you could have been there. Was the Ace Ventura films, and just being in it and watching you laugh at that, talking with his butt and all that kind of stuff. And my favorite scene is where he's out on the balcony.
What's the point, Ventura? Only this.
All right. Well, my number 2 is Richard Pryor, higher up in hierarchy, number 2, and here's my suggestion to folks, because I think if you're out there and you kind of don't know anything about Richard Pryor, I would strongly encourage you to get a hold of a copy of Richard Pryor live in concert.
I saw him let one loose on a young brother about 16 in the alley. Police jumped out the car and sicked the Doberman loose on him. The brother was low running. He was down in here. was on his and it must have got good to the brother because he shifted into overdrive on the dog. Yeah, the brother had a cap on. He just went.
But it was very interesting. When that movie came out, Roger Ebert was campaigning for a Best Actor nomination for Richard Pryor. Mm-hmm. And people are saying, wait a minute, it's a stand-up kind of stuff. But he plays different characters throughout this. Mm-hmm. It is the finest. I mean, if there's something that is funnier than that film, I don't know what it is. It is brilliant. And then he did a follow-up to that, Live on Sunset Strip, which wasn't nearly as good. But you start there, and then I think I would also go to the work that he did with Gene Wilder. But yeah, I miss Richard Pryor very, very much. And you talk about the chemistry with Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels. Same kind of thing. How do you stand up against Richard Pryor? I mean, the two of them was just perfect. How many concert films? Because you had like Eddie Murphy did his, I think it was called Red, that he did in the 80s. How many other concert films do you see that you would actually go back and want to watch over and over and over again?
Pryor, Murphy.
Pryor would be the one for me because it is like just watching, because he's telling stories, and that's what it is. It's not just standing up and telling jokes. He's telling stories, and you go into those stories, and it really is. It's revelatory.
Number 1.
All right, your number 1, numero uno. Do you have anything else to say about?
Well, I had a bunch of, and I really wanted to work Robin Williams into this list. I so bad wanted to work him into this. He's just so good. And again, you talk about the stand-up. Live at the Met is so good. Again, talk about Jonathan Lithgow. Who I wanted to mention, give a shout out, obviously. I think Seth MacFarlane in a little while longer might work his way onto this list because of kind of where he's been, and he's in all these different levels of comedy now. What? Say something. I'm not going to say James Franco or Will Ferrell. Even though he did make it to the third round, Will Ferrell.
I'd like a blood test.
But my number 1 is Bill Murray. And that's all I got to say. Drink Santori.
Army training, sir.
Santori time. I don't think there's anything I've seen in there I didn't like.
Hey, Vigo! Yeah, you, the bimbo with the baby. Didn't anybody tell you the big shoulder look is out? You know, I have met some dumb blondes in my life, but you take the taco, pal.
Steve Zissou, he's in that. Scrooged, I mean, those are two of the weirdest movies to say at the top of the list there.
Stripes, Groundhog Day.
Yep.
You're exactly right, and I'm embarrassed to say, I don't go to the internet. I made a long list, and he's not on it. Robin Williams was on that, Carol Burnett, Neil Simon, Harold Ramis, John Hughes.
Ramis was on there.
Huh?
Ramis was on my list.
John Landis, John Candy, Woody Allen, for crying out loud.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean,
I feel like he could have been on the list just by name alone, but I would have been a liar.
Well, and that's the thing. Most people look at Woody Allen and say, well, he's not really a comedian, but oh yes, he was. He started out as a stand-up comedian, and his first films were all laugh out loud. And
what's the robot butler one?
Sleeper, which is brilliant, and Love and Death, which is my favorite early one. I used to, laugh out loud at those, but no, he didn't make it on my list. I didn't even have Bill Murray. I wasn't thinking. That's Ghostbusters.
And here's the sad thing. I used to like him because he reminded me of you when he was younger, when you were younger. So
I've had somebody else say that too. Well, he lives in South Carolina.
I did not know that.
He does. Huh. Yeah. Yeah. All right. My number 1, and I struggled with this because it was 2 people that I knew had to be on that, and I couldn't put them both on there.
Laurel and Hardy.
Nope.
Abbott and Costello.
Nope. But both of those clearly.
I don't know.
What it came down to.
Buster Keaton.
Buster Keaton. Buster Keaton. I have talked about Buster Keaton before, and I strongly encourage you, especially younger folks, we wouldn't have movies were it not for Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin. And I know
she didn't like your take on it.
Black and white, and in the case of being silent film, although both of them sort of bridge the gap from into talkies. But when I say you would not have film today if it weren't for those. The reason that I picked Buster Keaton is that even though I think that you could build the argument that Chaplin has been more influential, and I love Chaplin's work, but Buster Keaton is more accessible, I think, for people out there, in the internet land, younger folks. It's because the stunts and the special effects that he did, and I would encourage you that the General and Steamboat Bill Jr. are the two that I would start with. And there's also a box set of Buster Keaton shorts, and those are quick ones, and that was sort of his first film work, which it's a brilliant box set. It's on Blu-ray. It's not that expensive at all, because these are all films that are like 100 years old. The stuff that there's Peter Bogdanovich does a documentary on Buster Keaton, and if you watch that, it'll make you want to go back and watch the films, because you'll be seeing special effects. Like, how did they do that? Because they didn't have they didn't have digital effects like they do now. So these are all practical effects, and he was brilliant at it. And because of that, it raised the audience's expectation about what movies could be. And then now we have a Steven Spielberg with dinosaurs and that kind of stuff. So it really is. I wanted to put both of them on there. I wanted Laurel and Hardy and Abbott and Costello, but for me, Buster Keaton is the first head that goes. And the sad thing about our is that these are all males. And
we talked about
white
this.
males,
Yeah, I think about the periods of time that the roles were available, who was writing the movies, the audiences they were marketing it to. It just happens to be,
that women were probably paid less, they got less, screen.
But here's the other end of this. If we were to do comedy television, there would probably be at least 2 to 3 women on that one. To be honest, like we just discussed it, Carol Burnett, Lucille Ball, Jessica. It would have been tough to find men to put on that list, and we'd be, feeling bad about that. But
Dom DeLuise, we miss. It just goes on and on. That's why it was so hard to have. So
this is the first one I saw that part 2 is going to happen. It's got to. We'll make the chisel a little bit bigger.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you enjoyed this, or you stayed for this Mount Rushmore of comedy special, our first special edition. We're going to do more of these. We drop new content every week, and we encourage you to come back. And we also are very interested in your interested in participating in this show. It's very easy. Just send us your name and your address, and what topic if you have an idea for 7 that you'd like to do based on something we've done or something your own idea, or if you have idea that you'd like to do a Mount Rushmore or any of the specials that we do, just write that on a postcard and tape it to the top of a 70-inch plasma screen television with Bose surround sound, and ship it to the address that's on the bottom of the screen there. And we'll be getting back with you. And again, thank you so much, and we'll see you at the movies.